JCrew just announced that they are filing for bankruptcy. When I hear news like this, I want to know what happened and how did they end up in this situation. I also want to know what this means for JCrew and other retailers going forward. Before we start diving into what happened to JCrew, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to see more videos like this. For people that love cardigans and chinos, it might come to a surprise that JCrew filed for bankruptcy. JCrew cites trouble from the recent pandemic that led them with no choice but to file for bankruptcy. This might all be true, that without the pandemic they wouldn't have declared bankruptcy. But looking at their past financial history, it was more likely only a matter of time that JCrew went bankrupt. JCrew was once a publicly traded company, meaning that anyone with a brokerage account could buy shares of JCrew, just like they would Apple or Tesla. In 2010, JCrew became a private company, which means not anyone can just invest in the company, and they are taken off the stock market. A company can go from being public to private when all the public shares are bought. This is sometimes done by the company itself, so they don't have to be influenced by short-term decisions by making their stock price rise. But often a private equity firm or another company takes over the company, buying them outright. These firms usually see the company's total assets, which include real estate, other investments, and other equipment, and see how much they could liquidate all these assets for. If they can sell literally everything and make more than they bought the company for, it's a good buy for them. To get this much money to buy out a company, these private equity firms turn to banks to borrow a majority of their funds. This is known as a leveraged buyout. Just like you would do if you want to buy a house, you would normally put 20% down and the bank would give you the other 80%. The same applies if you want to buy a whole company. In JCrew's case, the private equity firm TPG Capital and Leonard Green and Partners stepped in with a leveraged buyout and bought them up for $3 billion. Before the buyout, JCrew was already struggling. Same-store sales were already down 14% and still declining. These decreasing sales made their debt balloon up to currently $1.65 billion. Their only fan at the time seemed to be Michelle Obama, who was always seen wearing one of their signature items. JCrew at the time said that they didn't change their styles fast enough and missed out on a lot of trends that were becoming popular, such as athleisure. Also, smaller online boutiques are really cutting into high-end clothing brands, as people are searching for brands that have unique styles and are more exclusive. But with this being said, the private equity firm believed that they could turn around the image of the struggling retailer. They planned for a new revamp of the stores and items, but they first had to get rid of a lot of old inventory that isn't selling well. They began selling off all their old inventory at huge discount prices just to try to get rid of it. This made the brand start to seem cheap to some people and actually hurt the brand's image as a more high-end retailer. As the turnaround efforts fell flat, JCrew finds itself with $1.3 billion in debt and files for bankruptcy. This does not mean JCrew is completely out of business yet, though. There are different forms of bankruptcy. JCrew filed for Chapter 11, which means that they are reorganizing the company, downsizing, selling some of its asset, and most importantly, negotiating with creditors and seeing if they could get better terms on the money they owe. This would include getting some of its debt forgiven completely or getting a better interest rate so their payments would be lower. The other form of bankruptcy that people tend to jump to when they hear a company is going bankrupt is Chapter 7. This type of bankruptcy is the bad one. It means that the company is forced to sell all their assets to pay back as much of the debts as possible. This means that the company will no longer be operational. JCrew could have filed for Chapter 11 a while ago before the pandemic hit, and it actually would have helped them stabilize their financial situation. But during this time, banks and the government are working more with companies to try and help them as much as they can. JCrew saw this opportunity and decided now is the time to file for Chapter 11, since they would be in a better position to negotiate their new debt terms because of the pandemic. From Chapter 11, JCrew has secured $40 million to help them restructure and will turn some of its $1.6 billion of debt into equity. This means that whoever JCrew owes money to has agreed to forgive some of its debt for a piece of the company itself. Also, as part of this agreement, Madewell's, which JCrew owns, will remain part as JCrew and not be split off and sold as they were previously planning on doing. Since JCrew is filing for Chapter 11, they will continue to be in business, so nothing to worry about. You can still buy your chinos. But this is the first struggling retailer that has decided to take advantage of the situation and file for Chapter 11. We might see stores such as JCPenney, Sears, Macy's, and Lord & Taylor follow JCrew and file for bankruptcy. And as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see more.